Hello, all you cool cats and kittens. This is Gary, and today we will be draping a banded collar. This is a pretty basic collar shape, and it's pretty, I don't want to say easy, straightforward. I'll just show you. It's a little bit of setup, but it again goes relatively quickly. Just a couple of notes. I'm standing behind the camera because I need to be close up on the neck here, so that's the best solution I came up with. So I'll try not to hit the camera, but the camera is between me and the mannequin, so I hit the light. So I'll be draping kind of over the camera. So you won't see me, you'll just see my hands. A couple of things about the setup of this. So we need a piece of fabric that is 5¼ inches by 2½. Okay? And we want the 2½ to be on our grain line. Okay, so our selvage edge is here. That's our grain line. So 2½ inches by 5¼ inches wide. Okay? And we hit that light too. We cut that out. Cut it out. We cut that out, and then we're going to give ourselves 2 guidelines. Okay, so we're going to measure in from our short edge. We're going to do a ½ inch line there. That will mark our center front. And then we're going to do a line 2 inches down from the top edge across, and that's marking our cross grain. This is just like the setup for the skirt. Okay, so 2 inches down, cross grain. You do not need to write that on there. You should put center front just so you have a visual clue. But you do need that line as a guiding point. All right. On the mannequin itself, a few things that perhaps you notice is that the mannequin has a bodice on it already, okay? And we want to make sure that it's a bodice that fits well on here. And yes, Mackenzie, you can use your princess seamed one. That works just fine in this case. Okay? So we want to make sure that's on there. We want to make sure, excuse me as I turn this around. We want to make sure it's pinned on well. We just want to make sure that it's hitting at the neck of the form itself. Okay? The other thing you can see that I did a little preemptive, and that's okay, you can do that too, is to give yourself a mark on the line where the neck actually hits the mannequin on the bodice. Okay, we're going to use that as a guiding point. So we just need it as a reference point, and it will make the draping much easier if we do that. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to take our piece, and we're going to start at our center front, right at that nexus where those 2 lines cross, right at that point there. And we're going to pin that into the center front of the mannequin that way. Okay? We want to get that one nice and secure. Now, we have to pin up our center front here. We just have to be aware of a couple things, that there's no seam line on the mannequin here. We do have a seam in the back, but not on the center front. So we just need to make sure that that line is staying as straight as possible. We don't want to veer to one side or the other. So we just want to kind of use your best judgment, use your eye, and just pin that in gently. All right, and the next thing we want to do is we want to do a little bit of pre-cutting here. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of snipping on our collar line. Okay? And we're just going to snip up to our line, not past our line. Okay, I'd say 3 is probably enough. And what we're trying to do is we want to match this line, okay, with the neckline underneath it. Okay, so if you stab the pin through, that should be right on our neck edge there. Okay, we're going to pin that again. The scale we're working on makes this a little tricky, like everything. I need the little white ones because the little white ones are shorter. Okay, you probably want to get 2 pins into that. Well, that one didn't go into anything. Okay, so you want to make sure again that that's matching onto the neckline of the bodice. And coming back out again, and do the same thing. You'll probably only get 2 pins in because again, it's just not a lot of space. Okay, so and that by clipping that allows us to snug that up against the neck really tightly. Now, if we turn this around, we can see that if we just let this go, okay, it kind of wants to lay relatively flat. And that's what we're going to let it do. It's kind of going off on an angle that way. We're not keeping it on straight of grain. Now, part of the key things about draping, right, is that you want to learn to let the fabric do things that the fabric wants to do. Okay, so you want to set it up and give it conditions that can work in certain ways and can manipulate it in other ways. Okay, so this time, I know this is heresy. I'm going to tell you to clip past your line by just a little bit. I'm going to say like 1/8 of an inch. Maybe do 3. The heck, do 4. And just go right just past your line there. All right. Now what we're going to do It's just going to let this kind of lay as it wants. We're going to get it nice and smooth. We're not going to worry about these wrinkles right now. I'll come back to that in a second. So if I peel this back, again, now our line is down here, but if I peel this back, I can see where our center back line is. All right. So I want to pin this and match our center back line. Okay. And one more white pin. All right, now I said I would come back to this. These wrinkles here are being formed by the height of this. So if we clip this, if we cut this down, those will no longer be an issue. Okay, so don't worry about those wrinkles right now at this point. All right, so we're almost there. That's the home stretch, sort of. We're going to now go ahead and mark our center back. Okay. So coming down, we do have a seam on the center back of the mannequin. So you want to go ahead and do a center back dashed line there. And we want to, this is now marking our new center back right there. And then we're just going to follow that around and do a little dashed line wherever we pinned. And it should go back to the line that we started on, right? So it should be right on top of that in some cases. All right. So now that gives it our shape. The other thing I want you to do while you're here, turn back. See where our side seam is there? We just want to put a mark on our neck, and if you want, you can put a little SS. So when you get this off, you don't, you know what that mark actually is, and there's a reason for it. All right, so the last thing we want to do, this is going to be awkward because of just positioning. So what we need to do is mark a height on this collar. Now, if we were draping from a sketch, we would want to be referencing the sketch to see how tall the designer wants the collar. So I'm going to give you a height. I'm going to basically say in 1 inch. Okay. And I'm just going to put a mark. We're just going to go from our new neckline at the base there. And we don't have to worry about this being too precise. I know, what is he saying? He's never said that. We want it to be relatively precise, but the reality is we're going to mark this when we get it flat on the paper. Okay, so I'm just putting a few little dot marks. Like I said, it's hard to do with a ruler. It's easier, kind of, sort of, to do with a tape measure, but not really. Actually, I should check that one. Because, yeah, that's about right. All right. Again, not to worry. We're gonna fix that when we get it flat. All right, now we take out the pins, and we have the collar draped. You want to take a picture of it here before you take it off the mannequin. Show me that, and then you take this off. Okay? And again, you can see that's what our piece looks like, and it does what it needs to. It's center front, it's on grain. We're going to cut that on the fold if we were to cut this. It follows the shape of it there, and then it veers up a little bit in the back, and we have this angle line at the center back there. The angle line is good. It's not quite bias, right? True bias would be a 45-degree angle. This is not true bias, but this does give us a little bit of stretch. Okay, so again, it helps the shape of the pattern mold to the shape of the neck. We're going to lay this down on paper, then you're going to trace it, and this would be the place to even out the possibly sketchy width of that, height of that, okay? So you're just going to make sure that 1 inch marks are actually 1 inch. Hey, this one's not bad. There's that rogue one right there. And then you're going to make a paper pattern out of that. Where's my paper pattern? You're going to take your paper pattern, once you get it done, center front, remember if we were to cut this in fabric, would be on the fold. Okay. Or if you're cutting this on your final project, perhaps. All right, so that gives you that. And you're just going to pin it to the neckline. Again, you really can't. There's no seam allowance on this. That's why it says NSA. And you want to make sure you pin it on the center back. That should match with your shoulder seam. Okay. And it fits really well. It does. It should have a little bit. It should be a little bit away from the neck. And if you wear collars, you know that you don't want it too tight against your neck. Okay. And that's our banded collar. You're going to take a picture of this on the form as well. I don't necessarily need a picture of it in fabric. If you want to take the time to do that, great, but let's just do this much and at least you know how to drape it. All right, if you have questions, let me know.